Thank you so much for joining us and getting ready to chat about song royalties today. We really do appreciate it. By way of introduction, my name is Sean McNamara. I am the Director of Publisher Services here at the MLC. I am based in Nashville, Tennessee, with the rest of the MLC, though run the gamut. I'm from Connecticut. I lived in New York, lived in DC, went to school in New Orleans. Now I find myself in the volunteer state and learning everything that college football season has to offer here in SEC country. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking the time to learn about song royalties. I'll have a deck that I'm going to present going over some copyright basics, some music royalty basics, basics of the Music Modernization Act and the blanket license that the MLC administers. After we go through that deck, we'll open it up to Q&A, and I'll be happy to take your questions afterwards. Just one brief note from this point forward, we won't be using the chat box going forward for any questions. That was just to get to know you and to hear where you're calling in from. I'm going to keep it organized by asking you to utilize the Q&A box, which a few of you have already started to populate with some questions, which is great. And I don't want to miss any of your excellent questions. So I'll do another brief reminder after the deck. But if you do have a question, please use the Q&A box so I don't miss what you need to know. But with that said, I'm going to jump into our deck. This is always the most nerve-wracking part of hosting any webinar, especially by yourself, because I can't ask to make sure that my co-host can see it. So I'm going to trust you can see my PowerPoint. You can let me know if you don't. But with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so back to school time. Everybody's excited. Everybody's excited to learn about song royalties, what that means, the different streams of royalties, the Music Modernization Act, the blanket license, and the MLC. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. If you are new to what we do here, you might be asking yourself, what is the purpose of the MLC? Well, the MLC is the exclusive administrator of the blanket compulsory mechanical license, commonly referred to as the blanket license, and I'll be using that going forward. But we are its exclusive administrator for digital audio uses in the United States. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's the functionality of that? How does that get money into my pockets? Well, under the blanket license, if a DSP that has interactive streaming or download services operating within the United States has recordings of your works available on their platform, they have to take whatever usage is accrued and any royalties that are accrued and report that to the MLC. From there, we report those usages and pay those royalties out to you. You could be a self-administered songwriter, as I think many of you are, a music publisher, an administrator, or a mechanical CMO. Maybe you are based in a foreign country and you have signed up with your local CMO to collect US mechanical royalties. They may be signing up with the MLC as well. So this has pretty streamlined what used to be a really broken process. To step back for a second, why is the MLC needed? It was a pretty fractured world for streaming royalties before the MLC came along. So to step back even further, in 2018, the Music Modernization Act was passed, which created the blanket license that the MLC administers. Now, before the MMA and before the blanket license, every DSP that we just talked about had to handle their own administrative duties. That meant they had to go out and license each song and pay royalties and usage out to individual owners. And they struggled, the DSPs, to find owners so that they can license these songs and pay royalties out correctly. Because of those struggles that the DSPs had for years, rights holders missed out on hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties. There just wasn't an efficient way for songwriters to receive their mechanical royalties from the DSPs. So that's what the Music Modernization Act in large part was passed to solve, and what the blanket license was brought in to clean up. With it came a centralized administration of those royalties with standard processes, right? You need to know exactly what you're getting paid for and when and how much, right? The blanket license also mandated the creation of a public database that brings way more transparency to works that are streaming, that are earning usage and royalties. It's important that that rights holder information is public so that more of those rights holders can get paid accurately and on time, because the DSPs need to know who to pay, right? And that's exactly what the public database does. The best part of all of this for you, I hope, is that the MLC now collects all of those royalties from the DSPs and you get paid. So, to step back even further, let's go over some basics of copyright to better understand what kind of royalties you are due and the kind of royalties that the MLC will collect and pay to you for your works. For our kind of broad purposes today, there are two types of copyrights. The first one being a copyright on songs and compositions. Copyright law specifically refers to this as musical works. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It is the song. It's the music and the lyrics. It's created by songwriters, whether they are composers, lyricists, your guys with the acoustic guitar and the quad. These are the songs that they create, and they're often administered by music publishers. It is any music that can be expressed in musical notation, and the lyrics are words, if there are any, right? The actual composition of the song that you might be listening to. A great example is the song Yesterday, right? Everybody knows the famous Beatles hit. In this case, this is referring to the music and lyrics of Yesterday itself, what Paul and John wrote down in their notebooks in the 60s. On the other half, you have recordings, right? Copyright law specifically refers to these as sound recordings. And in this instance, it is the recording of that song or composition. It's created by artists and producers, very often distributed by record companies, or if you are a self-administered artist, maybe you're utilizing a distribution platform, but it is the recording of sounds. It's my voice into a microphone, my guitar through my guitar amp, and everything that we're laying down to tape that somebody could listen to. Very importantly, this is different from audio-visual works, which you might hear reference to in other places. That is a combination of audio and video. For really quick reference, the MLC does not administer anything related to audio-visual works. This is just sound recordings you put on a CD or you put on a stream, and it's the music that you're listening to. The flip side of this example is the Beatles recording of the song Yesterday, for instance. It's not just the song, but it is Paul with his guitar and the strings behind him, or any cover versions, right? Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, Frank Sinatra, they had created their own sound recordings of Yesterday. They are not entitled to royalties for the composition, but they created their own sound recordings of that composition that they may have the rights to, that they can get paid for. Now, honing in on the musical works part of this, right? Especially for the MLC's purposes, the owners of musical works have a few rights that they can authorize others to take advantage of. They can authorize people to reproduce their musical work, to distribute their musical work, or to publicly perform the work. Importantly, those rights to reproduce and distribute make up what we call mechanical licensing, which is in the name, right? We're the MLC, we are the Mechanical Licensing Collective. This is our bread and butter. Somebody has the right to reproduce their work in physical or digital records, or distribute that work in physical or digital records. Those create royalties that the MLC collects and pays to rights owners from DSPs, right? What the MLC doesn't touch is a separate type of royalty for the public performance of musical works. That would be performance licensing, which the MLC does not take part in, nor is it, umbrellaed under mechanical licensing. It's its own separate right, its own separate license, and we'll cover that in a few slides as well. Very importantly, we don't touch on it here in this slide, but the owners of sound recordings also have the right to authorize reproduction, distribution, and public performance of their own rights as well, their own sound recordings, though again, those wouldn't be included in mechanical licensing. For our purposes, mechanical licensing is just the reproduction and distribution of the composition. So a few examples, right? If we're talking about reproduction and distribution of a musical work, we might be talking about physical records like vinyls and CDs, right? Taylor Swift's 20 different versions of her new album. We could also be talking about digital records, so permanent downloads. Maybe it's an MP3 that you download from your artist's favorite online store or from iTunes, right? But again, kind of zeroing in on the MLC's purposes, this also includes digital records, interactive streaming, and limited downloads. So this goes back to the DSPs that we were talking about. Folks like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Tidal, they are distributing those usages through interactive streaming and limited downloads. And this is exactly what the blanket license was created to bring a sort of centralization to, right? The MLC is going to help you collect royalties from this very specific stream of royalties. So as you can see, the MLC is but one part in a much larger digital royalties landscape. And I have to say, if there is any graphic that the MLC is prouder of, I don't know it. I think this is pretty much the Rosetta Stone of everything that you could possibly want to know about the royalties that are due to you as a rights owner or a creator or a self-administered songwriter, right? To kind of wrap all of the different streams of royalties we were just talking about up, let's break it down. If we're talking about the rights, or excuse me, the royalties that are due the rights given owners of songs and musical works, that's broken down into public performance rights, reproduction, and distribution rights again. So calling back to public performance rights, those royalties are administered by your PROs. Folks like ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, you're probably pretty familiar with them. They would be collecting public performance rights and paying them either to publishers, similar to the MLC, that could be music publishers, self-administered songwriters, or administrators. They also distribute royalties to songwriters for the writer share of public performance rights. But here's where the MLC comes in. The MLC, with the blanket license, pays out royalties for the reproduction and distribution rights of those works. Again, that's called mechanical royalties. So the blanket license administers those works, or administers those rights, excuse me. The royalties due those rights are paid to the MLC, and then those royalties are distributed by the MLC to either music publishers and administrators, who then in turn distribute the royalties the MLC has paid them to the songwriters they represent. Or if you're a self-administered songwriter, the MLC will be paying those royalties to you directly. To also touch on sound recordings, even though the MLC doesn't distribute any royalties related to them, it's also important to note, as I mentioned in that last slide, that the owners of sound recordings also have the right to publicly perform, reproduce, and distribute those sound recordings. On the reproduction and distribution rights side of things, those royalties would be collected by distributors and aggregators and either paid to record labels, who in turn pay those royalties out to artists and producers, or they might again be going to self-release artists. That's really kind of the recurring theme. Whomever is due those royalties, organizations like distributors and aggregators will be paying those royalties out to you, similar to the MLC paying them out to self-administered songwriters, or ASCAP and BMI paying songwriters their writer share of works. And finally, there is a digital performance right for sound recordings as well, and all of those royalties are administered by Sound Exchange. Those royalties are split up really into three buckets. There's a label share that go to record labels. There's a featured artist share for featured artists, can you guess? And then there are royalties paid to non-featured artists via the IPRD fund that's administered by folks like SAG-AFTRA. So this is kind of everything that you need to know about any royalties that you might be due from a song or a recording of your song, excuse me. Don't worry if you haven't screenshotted this yet, though I imagine many of you have. You can download this here at the QR code that we have up on screen at this moment. I think I have personally handed out hundreds of cards at different conferences and group talks that we've given. This is a really important mapping to have good reference to. So if you haven't done already, please scan that QR code. That'll bring you to a downloadable version of that same graphic we just showed. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll pop them in the Q&A box once we're done here with this deck. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of everything that you may be due to be paid from your compositions and recordings of them. But for our very specific purposes here, we should be talking about how do you become a member of the MLC? Because we may, if you haven't signed up already, have money waiting for you. So let's talk about how to get that money to you. It all starts with becoming a member of the MLC. Who should become a member of the MLC? If you are a music publisher or a publishing administrator, or if you're an outside the US mechanical CMO, you should absolutely become a member of the MLC. If you're a self-administered songwriter, it depends. If you self-administer all of your works, then you should create a member account and collect your royalties with the MLC. Very importantly, though, if you have signed up with a music publisher or a publishing administrator to administer any of your rights, it will be their job to register your works with the MLC and pay you when we distribute those royalties to them. This is important because sometimes a self-administered songwriter may also choose to sign certain works up with an administrator and they'll self-administer the rest, right? If that's the case, be sure that you are only registering works that you can collect royalties from specifically. If you do have an administrator, it will be their job to set up that member account and register works into our database. But now you've determined that you should become a member of the MLC, and that process is really easy. There is a big blue Get Started button in the top right-hand corner of our homepage at themlc.com, and that's all you need to click to start on creating a brand new member account. This is maybe my favorite part of this whole webinar. Membership is free. All of the DSPs that we've been talking about pay 100% of the MLC's operating costs. That means that 100% of the royalties that are passed on to the MLC are paid out to you. We do not take any sort of administration fee, any sort of percentage off of the top. If the DSPs pay us those royalties to pay to you, then it is yours to keep, and we won't take any bit of it before it goes into your wallets. It's a really good time, I think, to talk up a few of the tools that are available to our members, because once you are a member, it's really important that you update us on all of your works so we know who we're paying, and that you make sure that you're getting paid for all of the correct royalties and recordings of your songs, I should say. So starting with the claiming tool, right? It's a pretty common occurrence if you have co-writers on any of your works that both of you at the same time may try to register the same song. I'm sure a lot of you have probably experienced this in other organizations like your PROs, like your CMOs. Sometimes it creates duplicate works. Sometimes shares gets rejected. It can be a little bit confusing, right? The claiming tool will allow you to claim shares of works that are already registered in our database. So let's say your co-writer submitted that work for registration to the MLC and they claimed their 50%. Here, you don't have to go through the work of registering that song anew. You can just slot your 50% share in and you're ready to be paid. If you do need to submit an entirely new work for registration, we offer a number of registration tools in the MLC's member portal. You can do it on a song-by-song basis, or you can do it in a bulk grouping of works. We have a really great Excel template that you can upload directly to our member portal. We try to make it as easy as possible for you to tell us what works we should be paying you for. I think a real favorite of members is our matching tool. When the MLC receives usages from the DSPs, we match as much as we can of that usage and those recordings to the works that are registered in our database. But on occasion, something gets missed. Could be the spelling of a recording not matching up with the spelling of a song title in our database. This allows you to find any recordings of your works that are not already matched to your works. It lets you identify them and suggest that the MLC matches them. So you go, hey, that's my recording. It should be matched to my work. We'll review it, make the match, and start paying you as soon as we can. We also have a really powerful overclaims tool that will help you resolve overclaims with other members. In this case, that would mean that members have registered shares to a work that go over 100% of the shares available on a work. Obviously, that is, we can't pay works out on 110% of a particular composition. So this allows members to work directly with other members to amend or relinquished shares, or if it was to get escalated into a conflict or a dispute, for all parties to provide documentation that shows it is their work and their share is correct. Finally, and maybe most importantly, you want to make sure that all of your works are properly registered with the MLC. We do have a catalog expert tool available to you in our member portal. You can export all of your data into Excel compatible files on demand. Very powerful stuff. We also touched earlier on our public search, right? As part of the passage of the Music Modernization Act, it was mandated that a public database be created. It is free and available to everybody, but anybody can check the MLC's database to see who owns what. What have our members registered to our database for payment? You can see who claims what, and you can find that all, again, in that very important top right-hand side of our screen on the MLC.com. You can access our public search to figure out, like we talked about, who wrote Yesterday by the Beatles and who claims that. If you wanted to know that, or if you wanted to make sure that your data or your co-claimant's data in the public database is correct, you can give it a search at that button. It's also important, I think, to get a little bit in the weeds here about how the MLC's distributions work, right? So now you understand what you should be getting paid for, what rights you have. You created your member account, you've registered your works with the MLC, and now you're expecting payment. The MLC focuses on a monthly distribution. That means a few different stops along the timeline. For really quick reference, at the top right-hand side of this screen is our distribution schedule, which is updated on a rolling basis on our website, on the MLC.com, letting you know exactly what usage month you can expect to be paid in which distribution month, and a rough estimate of target royalty distribution dates all the way over to the right. Now, you know that I mentioned a difference between the usage month and the distribution period, and that is because every MLC distribution is based on what we call a 75-day distribution cycle. To use January usage, for instance, say you know a recording of your work was particularly popular in January of 2025, right? And you want to get paid for that. The first date along our distribution timeline would be on or around February 10th, right? That's when we take what we call a snapshot of the information in our database. So if you're going to make sure that you want to get paid for January usage, make sure that your works are properly registered to the MLC's database by February 10th, because that's when we're going to say all of the works in our database should be paid for that January usage. That then calculates out to getting paid around mid-April. Day 75 of this distribution timeline is when you would be getting paid for that January usage. It allows us a few months to receive all of that usage data from the DSPs, match it to the works that members have registered to our database, and ensures that we can pay them out in a timely fashion to our members. Very importantly, we do need to make sure that your banking information is up to date, right? Now, we know to pay you. We have the usage of your recordings and we have the royalties in hand to pay out to you. We want to make sure that your banking information is correct and that nothing goes awry there. We do close this functionality between the 3rd and the 14th of each month, again, just to give us some ramp up time in advance of that coming distribution. So the final piece there is once you've registered the songs, once you've ensured that the recordings are properly matched to your works, let's make sure we can pay you correctly and make sure that's done before the 3rd of each month. If you don't screenshot this screen quick enough, it is available on our website at the MLC.com. And again, that schedule up at the right-hand corner of the screen is regularly updated with upcoming distribution dates. Finally, I think it's really important to touch on the difference between what we call blanket royalties, so royalties earned under the blanket license that I've been going on about, versus what we call historical unmatched royalties. It's going to be a pretty hot topic. We get a lot of questions about this, so hopefully this helps delineate the two. So the blanket license itself went into effect on January 1st, 2021. Any royalties that are earned from that usage going forward is from when the DSPs were operating under the blanket license, meaning the MLC began collecting those royalties due from the blanket license, and all that usage going forward gets reported to the MLC by the DSP, so we can pay you out directly. Just some kind of historical context. Again, going back to our 75-day distribution cycle, that meant that the MLC's first distribution for January 2021 usage took place in April of 2021. Now, as part of the creation of the blanket license, we had to talk about some usage and some royalties that took place before the blanket license, right? So again, before the MMA, before the blanket license, it was a really scattered world of the distribution of streaming royalties, right? DSPs operated under work-by-work licenses, which unfortunately meant a lot of royalties and usage kind of slipped under the cracks. So a sum of royalties and usage that predates the blanket license was transferred from the DSPs to the MLC in 2021. And we began to process those royalties for payment in June of 2022. We will continue to pay those royalties out to members once all of that data is prepared and loaded and matched for each DSP. So once you've gotten your member account set up and you're registering works to our database, you may get some royalties that predate January 1st, 2021 and back. But keep in mind that our focus and mainly what the MLC administers are blanket royalties that have taken place from January 1st, 2021 and forward. All right. So with that, hopefully that was a helpful guide as to what rights you have, what royalties are created by those rights, and how the MLC can collect what it can collect from you. But if you do want to learn more about the MLC, you can visit our website at any time. I keep saying it, but themlc.com. Hopefully I'm drilling that into your heads. We have a lot of really great resources available to you at any time on our resources page. You can see that at the top menu on the screen that's screenshotted here. We have it categorized by language, by type of user you might be, whatever you might want to learn about the MLC, the blanket license, and a lot of other really great music industry questions and terminology you can find on our resources page at themlc.com. If at any time you want to specifically get into questions or concerns you might have about your account, as I think we'll try to avoid here today to keep it general and helpful for everybody, you can reach out to our support team. They are active from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time. You can find their phone number below. You can reach them by contact us form, or there is a chat bubble available on the MLC.com. And I can confirm through any channel, especially the chat bubble, you will be talking to a real person. So please give us a shout if you do have any questions or need any help with your account at any time. You can also scan that QR code as well if you want to send a direct inquiry to our support team. Whatever your flavor is, we will be happy to help you. And if you liked me, like the MLC, anything that we've got to offer, please join us on social media. We have accounts on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Facebook, and YouTube. YouTube is a really important one to shout out because we do offer a number of archived versions of our webinars. We offer monthly and bi-monthly webinars on a regular basis, and many archived versions of those are available on YouTube. So if we don't get to your question today, or if you have some more specific questions about, say, royalty distributions and royalty statements or specific tools that the MLC offers, you might find the webinar that you're looking for on our YouTube channel. So give us a follow there, and we'd like to see you online. All right. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I say we have a pretty good number of questions in our Q&A box, so I will give that a start in a second. But I will again mention to kind of all of our new friends who have joined in the time since, we will not be using the chat box. I do see that a few folks have popped some questions there. I will not be referring to the chat box going forward. If you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to answer anything you need. Okay? So let's start with Marvin. Marvin asks, is there an efficient way to use a BMI Works catalog export so that I can use the bulk import tool in the MLC? Or is this something that needs to be done manually? I have over 300 plus songs, so this will take a while. That's a pretty impressive catalog. Congratulations, Marvin. We do not work with BMI, nor does our data cross over with BMI, right? I can't really speak to what BMI's catalog export file looks like, but the MLC has a highly specific formatted Excel template for uploading to our portal. So I couldn't really tell you how to best carry that data over into our template, but so long as you can utilize our Excel template, it's pretty helpful. There's a lot of tips and tricks there. You should be able to grab whatever data you need from that export and format it to the MLC's import file. Okay. Deanna asks, will you talk about how the MLC integrates with things like Song Trust? Since I have Song Trust, do I need to do anything with MLC besides have my account open? It's all so confusing. Well, let's make it less confusing. That's what we're here for, right? So you might have missed at the beginning, I mentioned that you can become a member if you are a publisher or administrator or a self-administered songwriter, so long as you have those rights to collect those royalties. We do not, I will say, integrate with Song Trust. We don't work with Song Trust necessarily, but if you have engaged Song Trust to collect these royalties on your behalf, then it would be their job to register your works with the MLC to pay you those royalties directly. So you wouldn't need necessarily to have your own member account unless you had some songs of your own that you administer. But we don't otherwise integrate with Song Trust. It's either a question of, have I told Song Trust to collect these royalties for me, or can I do it on my own? I wouldn't be able to answer that for you. That would be up to your individual relationship with Song Trust. So if you have any further questions, that might be something you want to share with them. But if it is your royalties to collect, please create your member account and register those works to our database. Bruce asks, I'm registered with BMI with over a dozen songs in my catalog and have not received any significant royalties. Unfortunately, Bruce, I would not be able to help you with that. As you might have caught with our kind of map of the digital royalties landscape, the MLC does not collect the same royalties as BMI, so I could not speak to any royalties you might be due at BMI. I would encourage you to reach out to them directly. Thomas asks, I have my own publishing entity through my PRO. Should I sign up at the MLC as my publishing business or as an individual? So you can, again, sign up with the MLC if you are a self-administered songwriter. If you don't have somebody else collecting mechanical royalties for you, please start a member account. We likely have money waiting for you, and we would love to pay it to you. Okay, Vance asks, I have an MLC account that I administer for. I'm now releasing new music under a new name. Do I have to open up another account, or can I have administrating accounts under one login? So you don't need separate member accounts based on your artist name or your songwriter name. If you are a self-administered songwriter, you are utilizing different artist names. We just need to know who wrote the song, right? When you register a song with the MLC, we ask for things like song title, songwriters, your publishing information, not necessarily the artist name. That goes to the sound recording piece of this. We are going to be collecting for you mechanical royalties, and that is due songwriters and publishers. So long as you are, you have the right to collect those royalties and you're providing your songwriter name, there should be no issue. You don't need separate accounts. Thomas follows up, do I register all songs with the MLC or just the ones that might be available via the DSP? So we do only collect royalties from the DSPs, but I think if you want to register your entire catalog, the ones that aren't on a DSP may not get any activity. So it's kind of really up to you, but we would be encouraging you to register the works that have activity at the DSPs just to make sure that we're paying you everything that is correctly earned by recordings of them. Okay, Steven asks, I have 5 songs released to streaming platforms in mid-June. ISRC codes were assigned by Lander. My songs have been registered with the MLC for over 2 months, but the recordings still don't show in the MLC matching tool. How long does it usually take for the MLC to be aware of recordings that are currently being streamed? And is there a minimum number of streams? So there isn't a minimum number of streams, but June would be a pretty quick turnaround. So if we're following the distribution cycle that we just talked about, 75 days translates roughly to June usage being paid out with the September distribution. So at this point, we should have gotten usage of those recordings in if there has been usage, but that's the key, right? if your recordings have been used and has accrued streams on these streaming platforms, they will report it to the MLC. So it's important that those ISRCs are matched to your works. And if they're not, you can look in the matching tool. But I would also encourage you, especially for such a new release, to make sure that there has been activity that the DSPs would report to the MLC. Because we won't have those ISRCs otherwise, right? There wouldn't be any usage that the DSPs have reported to us. And so therefore, nothing that we can match to your work or make available in the matching tool. I hope that answers your question. Jana asks, what if the MLC is paying out wrongly to a mega fraudster grifter? Well, Jana, I think this sounds like it might be something more specific to your account. I'll ask you to maybe reach out to our support team if you have some concerns. But we do everything we can to ensure that we are paying out to the correct rights holders. If you have specific concerns, please come to us and we will look into those further. But without that kind of detail, I will say that the MLC is charged by the MMA to make sure that royalties are paid out correctly to their proper rights owners. Okay. Martina asks, hi, Martina from Argentina. I think I got to go back to our chat. That might be the furthest we got in our reach today. What about sync rights and how are they collected? So sync rights are not anything that the MLC is involved in, to be honest. It is pretty outside of the royalty mapping that we just talked about. We were mainly focused on royalties earned by sound recordings and by the compositions. Sync rights, for everybody on the call, if you don't know, is the usage of compositions and sound recordings with a visual work. So it might be the use of a song in a movie or a TV show. Unfortunately, we wouldn't have much insight, Martina. That is really outside the scope of the MLC. But I would encourage you to maybe reach out to your PROs for more information. Organizations like that might be able to help you further. Okay, so Carmen asks, so the entity that collects from digital performances is only Sound Exchange, meaning we should also register with them in order to collect. Do they collect worldwide? You should register with Sound Exchange for those royalties in terms of their reach. Unfortunately, those are not royalties that we collect. I would encourage you to reach out to Sound Exchange for more information about what they can collect for you. Kiafa asks, you mentioned being a featured artist on a song. Do we register those songs with the MLC? If not, how do we handle those songs? So specifically for the MLC's purposes, it depends on if you are a featured artist, were you given mechanical rights to those works? If you have a right to mechanical royalties earned by those works, absolutely, you should register your share with the MLC and the entire song if it hasn't been registered already. But that specifically goes to your agreement with the writers of the works, the other artists of the works. I wouldn't say featured artists are necessarily given a specific percentage on a work. It's all in what is negotiated between yourself, the other artists and songwriters on the work. But if you do have rights to those royalties, absolutely register them with the MLC. Harriet asks, if Songtrust is listed as an administrator because I released through CD Baby, even though they are not a publisher, shouldn't they have registered all those songs they administered? Yes, if they are the administrator of these works, they should be registering those works with the MLC so they can collect any royalties that are due for recordings of those works. So whether it's Songtrust or CD Baby, many of you, if you're not familiar, you can sign up with a company like that to distribute your recordings and opt into publishing and administration. But that's not necessarily the case. It does go specifically to your agreement with that, with that administrator. But if you have engaged a Songtrust or a CD Baby to collect your royalties, it would be their responsibility to collect those royalties from the MLC for you. Carmen asks, in the case of independent recordings, CD albums, the share will be 100%. I'm not quite sure what that's in reference to, but again, I think it goes back to the share picture that is agreed to on a particular composition or recording, right? Whoever you worked with on that song, if you had a team of people, if you're not one person writing and recording, it depends on what percentages have been agreed to on the composition or the sound recording side. So I can't say blanket that all independent recordings you can collect 100%. I would encourage you to discuss that with any collaborators you work with. Okay. Mark asks, with a few of my songs under administration with another publisher, when I receive my royalty from the publisher, what would the code be to show revenue that came from the MLC? So it sounds like you're talking specifically about royalty statements that you might have been given by your publisher. We do not generate the publishing statements that your publisher would give to you. We provide a royalty statement to the publisher, but how they disseminate that data and provide it to you would be something you'd need clarification from the publisher on. We wouldn't be able to, unfortunately, tell you what your publisher's royalty statements look like. But we do provide MLC song codes, recording information, composition information in MLC royalty statements. So your publisher should have all they need to provide you with all of the data that you need. Deanna asks, Songtrust recently sent me a message stating that I did notice your song was missing. Songtrust Publishing claims, as a result, I have requested that our copyright team expedite the song over to the MLC so that our claim can be accounted for so that we can collect your royalties for the song moving forward. Will I get my royalties from the past? This is a great question. If recordings of your works have accrued usage over time, but the work has not been registered with the MLC yet, absolutely, those royalties are accruing and waiting for you. So whether it would be you as a self-administered songwriter, or in this case, if it is Songtrust acting as your administrator, with registration of those works, we will go back and reprocess prior period royalties for payment to you. So once they register that song, you will be paid the royalties that you need going forward. Okay. Carmen asks, what organization works out of the USA like the MLC? We only have insight into royalties earned within the United States. Very specifically, the blanket license only administers usages earned within the United States. If you have other questions about usage outside of the United States, I would encourage you to contact a CMO in that territory for more information. They would be able to point you in a better direction than I ever could. Okay. Whitney asks, if my original songs are distributed to the DSPs but are not being played on TV or other places that would offer traditional royalties, does the MLC collect money that I'm missing out on by not registering them? Does the MLC collect money above and beyond the normal artist composer percentage already given to me from the DSPs for basic streaming? So we only collect royalties earned from usage on the DSPs earned within the United States. You're right. We do not distribute royalties from usage in TV or other places. This is purely just digital platforms that offer streaming and all of the royalties that are due from that usage. So I wouldn't say we collect more money above and beyond. It's just the money that is accrued with that usage. So as your work is streamed on a DSP, it earns a specific royalty under rates set by copyright law. Once those royalties are generated, they're passed to the MLC and we'll distribute those royalties to you. I hope that answers your question. Okay, Vance asks, I put in my BMI IPI number, title of the song, and my name on the MLC, and no results came up. Why is that? It may be that your song is not registered with the MLC yet. So if you are a self-administered songwriter, it is your job to collect these royalties. If those works are not in our database, please register a member account and register those works in our database. If you have a publishing administrator whose job it is to collect those royalties for you, please get in touch with them to make sure that they have registered your works to the MLC's database. Jose asks, is the MLC planning to collect royalties from before 2021 in the future? Jose, the answer would be no. So we primarily administer royalties earned under the blanket license that went into effect January 1, 2021 and forward. As I mentioned, we do have some historical royalties that were forwarded to the MLC by the DSPs, but that will be the extent to which the MLC collects or distributes any royalties from pre-2021 usage. We only administer the blanket license. That means usage from January 1st, 2021 and forward. There will not be any sort of extension to pre-2021 usage past that. Lena asks, is it possible to get my royalties from streams from 2024 when the works are registered with the MLC, but I am not a member yet? Again, it totally depends on whose job it is to collect those royalties for you. So if that is you, if you are a self-administered songwriter, those royalties are very likely waiting for you. So create that member account and register those works with the MLC so we can pay you. If you do have a publishing administrator, again, it will be their job to register those works to our database to pay you directly. But absolutely, there's no time like the present. Stephanie asks, if I am a self-administered songwriter with a music publishing LLC, should I join the MLC under my name or my LLC's name? It's honestly totally up to you. If you'd prefer to use your name or whatever name you've given your LLC across, music industry royalty sources, you can register that member account in your name. Remember that our database is public, so if you find it more helpful to create that member account with your LLC's name, you are free to do so. Tia asks, a very good question. How does the Harry Fox agency fit into the royalty landscape? So HFA is our data vendor. I will say they help us process some updates to works in our database. They're kind of like, I'll say our cousin company, but they do an entirely different kind of mechanical licensing that the MLC does not do. So mechanical licensing that might be due for more physical releases, some audio visual. They also do mechanical licensing, but very specifically, they do not do digital audio streaming mechanical licensing. That is solely where the MLC comes into the fray. They have other mechanical licensing business that is separate from the MLC. If you have any more questions about, again, more physical mechanical licensing or any sort of other type of format that might be covered by mechanical licensing, you might want to reach out to HFA. Nancy asks, if my co-writer used DistroKid to release our song, will I receive streaming royalties via DistroKid? Or do I need to register with the MLC to receive my portion of the streaming revenue for DSPs? Again, that comes down to what has been agreed to for your work. If your co-writer was going to collect your royalties for you, they might have submitted that to DistroKid, but if you have your own piece of the pie, your own share of mechanical royalties earned by this work, that would be you and your member account's job to register those works to our database so we can pay you directly. Christopher asks, how about songs that are uploaded to YouTube as videos? How do royalties get collected? My short answer is elsewhere. Unfortunately, the MLC does not collect any royalties from any audiovisual uses, which would include YouTube. Again, you might want to reach out to HFA or other sources like that would collect some of those royalties, but unfortunately, that is not the MLC's purview. Okay. Milagra asks, I registered my music to the MLC in March, but until now, nothing happened. Some of my music is over 8 years and I have not received my royalties from it. So if your works are 8 years old, that would put the release of your works at, what is that? 2017. So that would be squarely in what we're calling the historical unmatched royalties. The MLC administers royalties from January 1st, 2021 and forward. So that would be really what you're looking for. If you're looking for royalties earlier than 2021, dating back to 2017, it might be in the historical unmatched royalties we have to distribute, but we couldn't guarantee that. We only have the sum of usage and royalties that the DSPs have provided us. And if it's not there, unfortunately, that would be the end of our insight to pre-2021 usage. We would encourage you to reach out to the DSPs if you have any further questions. Karen asks, are you only for digital royalties? Correct. We do not collect any royalties for, say, vinyl, CD, cassettes. If you're very hip and into cassettes like some are, we would not be collecting any of those royalties. Okay, we have a few that I'm sorting through here. Neil asks, if you use a third party such as an administrator or song trust initially for registrations, if that relationship severs, how do the existing registrations transition to you after the fact if you have an MLC account? Well, in that case, we would ask you to notify us. We have a few different tools by which you can do that. You can start a conflict with Songtrust. You can request a catalog transfer from Songtrust. It all starts essentially by telling the MLC in some way that you have ended your agreement with Songtrust. The works that Songtrust has registered are now yours to collect. We'll reach out to Songtrust to confirm, and once everybody's on board, we will take those songs and we move them over to your catalog. So it's up to you how to best approach it, whether it's just a one-off song or a whole catalog that needs to move. But it all starts with letting us know, and we'll take it from there. Kara asks, is it still 75 days for payment if you're due any historical royalties once you register your songs? How far back will the MLC collect once you register your songs? So that 75-day distribution cycle is attributable to all usage that the MLC pays out from 2021 and forward. If there are any historical unmatched royalties available for payment to you, our general rule of thumb is that we will try to reprocess prior period royalties within 2 to 3 distributions. It depends on how far back we need to go, how much data there is. But to your second question, Kara, I have seen some royalties dating back to even 2013, but for the most part, it's pretty small. Because again, to really kind of reiterate this, the focus of the MLC is on 2021 and forward usages and royalties. That is royalties that were earned under the blanket license that the MLC administers. And we had very little insight into what might have happened to pre-2021 usage. We have what was forwarded to us by the DSPs. If it is missing, if you're not getting those historical royalties from the MLC, they may have been paid out to you in previous years, or you may need to reach out to the DSPs directly. Jose asks, I heard Spotify assigned a number to all the songs, I guess to identify each song. Do I have to provide the MLC with that number? Does the MLC provide that number? Unfortunately, Jose, I'm not quite sure what you're referencing. The MLC, for instance, does have song codes. So once you have created your own member account and you register a work in our database, it's given a song code. In terms of internal Spotify codes, I don't know that that's clarification I could provide, but if you want to follow up with our support team after the fact, we would be happy to provide you any further insight we have. Kiafa asks, if co-writers are not registered with the MLC, will that hinder my payments? Absolutely not. So let's say you and I wrote a song and I have not registered my 50% to the song, but you have gone ahead, registered that song, and created a 50% claim that you are due. My not registering my 50% will not keep the MLC from paying you the royalties that you're earned. We will pay out based on the shares that are in our database. And so that when I come along a few months later, I'll be paid my 50%, but you don't have to wait for me. Neil asks, have you considered having an artist data entry field added that can help with search for those who may need to find a work or want to speak with the publishers for licensing? As of now, the only associated fields for the publisher are associated writers. That would actually be correct, Neil, because if you go back to what we spoke about earlier, how different rights are mapped, we collect royalties on behalf of self-administered songwriters and publishers. We don't collect royalties for artists, right? That's more on the sound recording side. So it's not generally in the information that we ask a publisher to register to our database. When you're registering a song as an MLC member, you're including a song title and the songwriters. Inevitably, when something is matched to a work, you'll have an artist name, but it's not in the song registration data that we ask members to submit to our database. So it's a great idea. I'll be happy to share it, but it actually wouldn't be as relevant to the MLC's purposes as you might think, because we are talking about a different type of right that's focused on songwriters and publishers. Joe asks, I have 30 plus years of songs released on major label artists. Is there a way for me to verify that all of those releases were properly registered with the MLC? Absolutely. You can check our public database. At any time, whether you're a member or not, you can use our public search tool, search for your works by title and writer. If it's there, you should be good and you should be getting paid. If it's not, and you have a publishing administrator, that's a sign to have a conversation with your administrator and make sure that those works are registered. And if not, barring anything else, you can create your member account. If it's on you to collect those royalties, then you can register those works to our database. Jared asks, if a song was placed in a movie but was never released on DSPs and doesn't have an ISRC, is there anything for the MLC to collect on that song? The answer would be no, Jared, because again, we do not collect any sort of audiovisual royalties. We only collect usage and royalties from usage on the DSPs. So that work has to be streaming. If it just got placement in a movie, that is not a stream of royalties that we would be collecting. Jose asks, can the MLC distribute to the DSPs as CD Baby does? No, that would actually be kind of the opposite direction of the way that the blanket license work. Usage is reported by the DSPs to the MLC, and we pay those out, right? We do not, in turn, report usages to the DSPs or act as a distribution service like CD Baby does. CD Baby takes your recordings and gives them to the DSPs so they can stream them. We do not offer that service. Neil asks, Sound Exchange has a 3-year black box of unregistered works. How far back does the MLC go for unregistered works? I know you touched on this briefly with the pre-2021 royalties explanation. So again, the MLC administers the blanket license, which went into effect on January 1st, 2021. All of that usage and forward, the MLC collects and pays out. We have a sum of pre-2021 usages that the DSPs have provided to the MLC for distribution, but we don't administer that usage, and we only have what the DSPs have provided for us. So primarily, you should be coming to the MLC for 2021 and forward royalties. We may have some royalties for you in the historical unmatched, but if it's not there, unfortunately, we would have very limited insight as to what the DSPs reported to us and why. If something is still missing there, say you're looking for 2018 usage and it's not there, it may have been paid out to you beforehand, or if not, unfortunately, I'd have to point you back to the DSPs. We wouldn't have that insight. Monique asks, I signed up with CD Baby in the early 2000s and asked them to stop collecting because I have a publishing company now. I had to sue to get them off. That sounds unfortunate. Now they're back on my songs via Song Trust and ASCAP. I don't know what to do. I believe they're collecting my royalties from MLC and ASCAP. Well, importantly, we are different from ASCAP. Our databases do not cross, and we do not collect the same type of royalties. So all you need to be concerned with for MLC purposes is who has registered those works in the MLC's database. If that's you and not CD Baby, then you're set. Any royalties that we get from recordings of your works will be paid to you. If instead there are some CD Baby registered works of yours in our database, you can start a conflict or a catalog transfer with them to ensure that those works are moved over to your catalog. I would suggest reaching out to our support team if you have that concern after the fact. Dean asks, if you're a co-writer on a song that was big in Europe and you think they didn't register it with the MLC for collection of royalties in the US, should I register it myself? Well, two things. One, we do not collect usage from outside of the US, so we couldn't really speak to whether it was earning or big in other places. But if there is usage in the MLC, or excuse me, in the US, those works should be registered with the MLC, whether that is you as a self-administered songwriter or through a publishing administrator that you have engaged with. Absolutely, that US usage is reported to the MLC and is awaiting payment. So make sure that you have the rights to claim those royalties and submit it for registration to our portal. Raquel asks, if I registered a song with the MLC and it's been streaming for over a year, but no activity shows up on my MLC account, have I missed a registration step? I wouldn't say you've necessarily missed a registration step, but I would encourage you to utilize our matching tool. Because as I mentioned before, we take all of that usage from the DSPs, we match it to the works that a member has registered to our database, and we pay those royalties out. If you don't see any royalties or anything matched to your work, but you know it's there, take a look at our matching tool. The ISRC you're looking for may be there, and if that's the case, you can say, hey, that's a recording of my work. Please match it to my work so I can get paid. We will do just that. Will asks, how long does it take for songs to be registered? I have songs that say submitted in my catalog for 2 months now. It should take only a few weeks for our work to be submitted for registration to our database. If you're having any more technical issues, I would suggest reaching out to our support team for more information. Robert asks, if a song of mine has been on DSPs for a year now, but won't appear when I'm registering that work on the work search, then I upload it manually, will past royalties be collected still, or will they begin accruing from that point forward? If there are royalties from blanket license usage periods, again, meaning January 2021 and forward, that haven't been collected yet because those works are not in our database, those royalties are awaiting payment for you. So please register that work with us. Make sure that recording is matched to your work, and we will pay you any royalties that you're due. Derek asks, do you have any tips or tricks on gathering correct metadata to integrate registering works with the MLC into our rollout process? Derek, it's really as simple as making sure that if you're about to register a new work to the MLC, or you're about to release a new work, jump the gun there. If you're about to release a new work, register that composition with the MLC, making sure that you include any and all important metadata, meaning song title, you as a writer, any co-writers you have, your share to mechanical royalties from that work. If there are, let's say, any AKAs to the work, make sure you include that. But all we need to know is the basics of that song registration, and we will go ahead and match it to usage that we receive from the DSPs. David asks, to be clear, does the MLC collect royalties on my music that is played in YouTube? My YouTube presence is static visually, but used by many as a playlist. Again, David, we do not collect any royalties from usage on YouTube. I think what you're likely referring to are YouTube art tracks, where it's just an album cover and streaming music. That is still an audio-visual usage. And unfortunately, MLC would not be collecting those royalties. So you wouldn't be coming to us for those usages and royalties. Carmen asks, would it be possible for you to send us a list of DSPs with information we could digest easier? In order to collect, we should register with one of those, right? You would need to register actually with the MLC if you have usages on the DSPs. So if your recordings have been released on a DSP and are getting streams, those royalties are reported to the MLC for payment to you. So I would encourage you to sign up with the MLC and create a member account. On our website, we do list all of the DSPs that we work with. You can see actually the specific notice of licenses they have filed to work with us, all available on the MLC.com. Jared asks, an artist I work with is registered with Song Trust, but I noticed that some of the songs she's written on don't show her shares as claimed. Do you know why that might be? Either her or her publisher hasn't claimed those royalties. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with that artist and make sure that they are collecting their royalties properly. Jatuli asks, if a release was taken down, could you still have the MLC collect royalties for the time it was live if it was released in 2021? If we've received that usage, presumably there are royalties for distribution. I don't know quite the specifics of what you were speaking to. You might want to reach out to our support team. But if there is usage on a DSP, it has been reported to the MLC for payment. Erica asks, does the royalty collection only apply to songs we have co-written on, or does it apply to contributions like backing vocals, instrument parts, etc.? So that is all dependent on the shared picture that you and your collaborators have agreed upon. If you, along with the songwriters and producers of the work, have granted you a share to mechanical royalties, then you can absolutely register that share with the MLC for payment. But I couldn't speak to what that agreement is. Primarily, these royalties are collected on behalf of songwriters. So it depends on, did you and your collaborators agree that that contribution amounted to songwriting or do a part of royalties? It's really kind of up to the conversations you had in the studio. So I defer to your collaborators. Christopher asks, if I'm a member of ASCAP, do I still need to register songs with them, or can I just register through the MLC or Lander or CD Baby? We, again, do not collect the same royalties that ASCAP does. Lander and CD Baby are also other companies that don't work with mechanical royalties. So you still want to create a member account with the MLC, but we will not be registering works at ASCAP or CD Baby or working with Lander or any sort of distribution company. Kiafa asks, just for clarity, does Songtrust and the MLC offer the same services? We do not. The MLC is the source to which DSPs have to report usage and royalties for activity on their services. Songtrust is a distribution company that offers clients the ability to have Songtrust administer their publishing rights, but we do not distribute any recordings like Songtrust does, nor do we administer publishing rights for you. We are essentially the clearinghouse. If there are royalties due to you from the DSPs, you come to the MLC for them, but we otherwise don't administer your publishing rights. Jose asks, if I write a song today, for example, do I register the song first with the MLC and then publish with, let's say, CD Baby? It's honestly up to you. It kind of goes back to that question about tips and tricks, right? If you are preparing a new release, the important thing in whatever order you do it is that places like the MLC, most importantly the MLC, have the information that they need to pay you the royalties that you're due. So if you are about to release something through DSPs, two DSPs through a CD Baby, yeah, it wouldn't hurt you to register with the MLC in advance to make sure that as soon as we get that usage in, there is a work in our database to match and pay out to. But it's really kind of up to your own rollout plan, I would say. All right. We have officially answered all questions in the Q&A box. I will leave it open for another minute or two just to make sure that there's no other shy folks, people thinking about their last questions. But I'll take a moment to thank you all again for joining us. It's really been a pleasure getting to talk to you this afternoon. I hope you found this useful. Thank you, Jose. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. It's really been a pleasure. This is honestly my favorite part of the job, is getting to connect with people the country over, the world over. So really appreciate you taking the time to ask us some really great questions. If you have further questions, if you need further assistance, again, please do reach out to our support team at any time. We will be happy to help you with anything you might need MLC wise. So thanks again. We do appreciate it, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.